The grandmother saw it before anyone. She had lived with 7 dogs in her life. She had never seen one stand like this. They believed the Irish wolfhound had become dangerous. He had become the opposite of that. Laura Fenwick had been a public health epidemiologist for 11 years. She had seen more than most parents ever would, and she trusted that. She had built her whole approach to motherhood around it. 7-month-old Margot had been sick for 4 days. A mild respiratory virus, the kind that moved through every daycare in October. By the morning this story begins, the fever had broken. Margot was eating soft crackers. She was walking. By every measure, Laura knew she was getting better. Xander was an 8-year-old Irish wolfhound who had shared the house since before Margot existed. He had never shown anything but patience with her, the ear-grabbing, the shrieking, the lurching of a child learning to walk. He was the kind of dog people described as gentle, to the point of being a little dull, which is why what happened on the Thursday made no sense. Xander pulled himself off the floor, crossed the room, and lowered his face until his nose was 6 inches from Margot's face, that long jaw hovering at the baby's eye level, drifting closer, pressed to her chin, to her cheek, to her mouth. Margot started crying. Xander didn't back away. He leaned closer. Laura watched from the counter, coffee in her hand, and felt the first thread of unease. "Xander, go, lie down." He lifted his eyes to her and stayed exactly where he was. Margot cried harder. Xander pressed his nose toward the baby's mouth, slow and deliberate, and held it there for 2 full seconds. Laura set down her coffee. In 11 years of public work, she had seen dogs upset children before. She had seen the pattern: stress behavior, resource guarding, overstimulation around a crying infant. She had seen families dismiss warning signs until it was too late. She knew what this looked like. The size differential alone, 78 pounds to 7 and change, made her stomach tighten in a way she recognized as professional instinct. She crossed the kitchen and put herself between them. Xander moved around her. He wasn't growling. He wasn't stiff. But he would not leave Margot alone. Atticus came downstairs and watched for 30 seconds. Should we put him out back? Laura was already nodding. Just for a few hours, until she's calmer. Her mother-in-law, who had come to help that week, said it from the hallway without being asked. "You're right. You can't take that risk with a baby." They had all reached the same conclusion. That felt, at the time, like confirmation. The back door clicked shut. Margot stopped crying almost immediately, which felt like proof. Laura picked her up and held her, and felt the quiet of a problem solved. Margot fell asleep against her shoulder, and Laura put her down in the nursery. She went to fold laundry in the next room, the monitor on the counter beside her. Xander was scratching at the back door within 10 minutes. Not barking, scratching, a continuous, focused, rhythmic scraping that didn't stop. Stay with the story. There is one detail still ahead that nobody in this family saw coming. Subscribe for stories like this. Atticus let him in. He went directly to the nursery threshold, positioned himself at the threshold, and would not move. Laura came to stand beside Atticus. She looked at Xander standing over the sleeping baby. She looked at how still he was, how focused. In 11 years, she had learned one thing above all else about children in trouble. The silence that follows distress is not always peace. She went to Margot. The color in her face was wrong. Not dramatically, not the gray she knew to fear, but off. A faint pallor around the lips. Hands slightly cool. Breathing even, but shallow. Laura picked her up, and the limpness was too much. Just slightly too much. And she was already reaching for her phone before she finished forming the thought. The number she got back 15 minutes later at the emergency clinic was 41. Normal floor, 70. Margot's blood glucose had dropped to 41 milligrams per deciliter, post-viral hypoglycemia, a known risk in toddlers who stop eating during illness as the body depletes stored glycogen without the parent ever knowing it's happening. No dramatic symptoms, no alarm, just a quiet, dangerous slide. The dog was responding to the acetone compounds in her breath. Dr. Hugo Marlowe, the wildlife biologist with the State Fish and Game Department at Boston Children's, told them when blood sugar drops, the body produces volatile organic compounds detectable in exhaled air. Irish wolfhounds register those compounds at concentrations thousands of times below human sensory threshold, and they respond to them before any visible symptom appears. She looked at the mother directly. You brought her in when you did. Another 25 minutes, and we would be managing a seizure. What's the one thing your animal did that you still can't fully explain? We want to hear it. Tell us in the comments. The mother sat with that for a long time, the face pressed to Margot's mouth each morning. Not aggression, breath detection. The refusal to leave after every correction. Not defiance, an alarm that couldn't turn itself off. The scratch at the back door. Not impatience, the sound of him trying to get back to his post. The vigil at the threshold, perfectly still over the sleeping child. Not dominance, medical surveillance. He had been reading what she couldn't see since the moment Margot woke up. He had been right for hours. He had been right for days. The only thing he had not been able to do was tell her in a language she would have understood the first time. Subscribe if you want to be the kind of household that listens to the quiet ones. The next story is already being written. They drove home in the dark. Margot was stable, drowsy, wrapped in a hospital blanket. Atticus carried her inside. Laura opened the back door. Xander came in without drama. He walked to where Atticus had set Margot down and lay close beside her, the full length of his body against her side. He did not perform relief. He did not announce his return. He went back to the post he had been pulled away from. He put his chin on his paws. He watched. The next family did not have a dog. They had a parrot. The parrot said one word she had never taught him. That word saved her son's life. Laura sat on the floor across from them. She didn't reach for her phone. She didn't move to the kitchen. She watched the slow rise and fall of her daughter's chest and the dog's chin resting level on the floorboards, his eyes still open, still watching the way they had been watching all day. She thought about that for a long time afterward. The dog had been doing the job the entire time. He had been doing it for hours before she was awake. He had been doing it for the 4 days the child had been sick. He had been doing it the way every animal in every house has been doing it, for as long as there have been animals in houses, which is to say, longer than the family had been alive, longer than the breed had been recognized, longer than the country the house stood in had been on a map. The dog did not know it was extraordinary. The dog knew it was Tuesday. The husband sat on the floor across from them. He did not speak for a long while. When he finally said something, it was not about the dog, and it was not about the doctor. It was about himself. He said he was sorry. He said it once. He did not explain. The dog watched him with a kind of attention that has no human equivalent, the attention of an animal who has finished his job and is waiting to see if the humans understand what the job was. They did not, fully. They never would. But they understood enough to keep him in the house. They understood enough to never raise the question again. Later, when the child was old enough to ask questions about the photo on the refrigerator, the one of the dog asleep at the foot of the crib, the mother would tell a version of the story. She would leave out the worst parts. She would leave in the part about the dog. The child would learn the dog's name before her own. The child would learn what loyalty looked like before she learned what danger was. That order of learning matters more than any household in the country knows. The doctor's voice on the phone the next week was the same calm voice it had been at the hospital. The follow-up numbers were normal. The follow-up scans were clean. The medication was working. None of this would have mattered without those first 40 minutes. And the doctor said so in the kind of plain language doctors say for the families they know will remember it. She said, "The dog gave you the time we needed. Time was the only thing we needed." The mother wrote that sentence down in her notebook and underlined it. The dog did not change after that. That was the part nobody expected. The family braced for a different animal, a more anxious one, a more attentive one, a hero version of the dog who would carry the story in his body. He did not. He went back to lying in the spot by the door he had always lain in. He went back to barking at the mail carrier, the way he always had. He went back to leaving wet nose prints on the inside of the back window. He did not perform what he had done. He just kept doing it, which was the whole point. The fire marshal called 2 weeks later with a final report. The carbon monoxide reading had been at the level that produces unconsciousness within 90 minutes of sustained exposure. The repair on the furnace had cost less than $400. The family had a new detector installed the same day, hardwired, with a battery backup, with a smart home alert. They installed 3 of them. They did not feel safer. They felt, for the first time in their lives, that the only system in the house they fully trusted was the one with 4 legs and brown eyes and a slight limp from an old injury. On a Saturday in November, the grandmother came to visit. She watched the dog and the child for a long time before she said anything. When she finally spoke, it was the kind of sentence old women say once when they are sure. She said, "He has the eyes of a dog who has done his work." She did not explain. She did not need to. The mother nodded, and the dog, who was lying on the rug between them, exhaled the slow exhale of an animal whose job is being witnessed by a human who finally understands what the job is. On a Saturday in November, the grandmother came to visit. She watched the dog and the child for a long time before she said anything. When she finally spoke, it was the kind of sentence old women say once when they are sure. She said, "He has the eyes of a dog who has done his work." She did not explain. She did not need to. The mother nodded, and the dog, who was lying on the rug between them, exhaled the slow exhale of an animal whose job is being witnessed by a human who finally understands what the job is.